My mom passed away while giving birth to me, so I never got the chance to know her. From the pictures I've seen, she looked beautiful, and my dad always spoke of her as a wonderful woman. I believed him because he was an amazing father. He raised me on his own, with some help from my aunt, until I was about 11 years old. My aunt had kids of her own, a bit older than me, but we all grew up together like siblings. Even now, we're close, my aunt included. Just like my mom, she was a kind and loving woman. My dad worked insane hours to provide for us. He owned a small convenience store and ran it almost single-handedly, acting as both manager and cashier. For most of my childhood, he only had one other employee at a time. At first, it was a Chinese man, but he had to leave to care for his sick parents in China. Then, my dad hired a white guy who did okay for a while, but once he graduated college, he moved on. Eventually, my dad found someone new, a Chinese woman named Barbara. Barbara was just 26, significantly younger than my dad, who was already 44. She didn't even speak the same dialect of Chinese as my father, which made things a bit tricky, especially since most of our customers were Chinese-speaking. However, her English was decent, which helped occasionally. At first, Barbara seemed kind to me. She acted like a big sister while she and my dad were dating, so I thought she was a good person. But everything changed once they got married. Her family, who were quite wealthy in China, paid for a fancy wedding. They all flew to America for the ceremony, but my dad, being the hard-working and independent man he was, kept working nonstop, refusing to let anyone pay his way in life. After the wedding, Barbara moved into our house, and that's when I saw her true colors. She was no longer the friendly big sis she pretended to be. Instead, she became someone entirely different, someone who made my life miserable. Before the wedding, Barbara treated me as a peer, almost like an older sister. But after she officially became my stepmom, everything changed. She became strict and controlling. She no longer allowed me to help out in the shop as I used to. It wasn't like some Cinderella story where I was forced to do endless chores, but she did something much worse. She isolated me from my father. Over the next few years, she slowly convinced my dad to sponsor several of her relatives and friends from China to come to America. My dad, always generous and business-savvy, set these people up with small businesses. He wasn't rich, but he had a talent for making money and helping others do the same. With his help, they opened restaurants, dry cleaners, cell phone repair shops. Basically, all the small mom-and-pop stores you'd see in any town. But the problem? None of these people cared about my dad or me. When I was 17, my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer from years of heavy smoking. He had been smoking since he was just 13 years old, and now it had caught up to him. I watched helplessly as his health declined. Just 2 years later, at only 52, he passed away. Losing him was devastating. Not just because he was my father, but because he was my only true family. For years, I had dreamed of taking over his store when he retired. I wanted to continue his legacy, to build on everything he had worked so hard for. But now, at just 19 years old, I wasn't legally allowed to sell liquor yet, so I assumed that Barbara would at least let me work there until I could take over. I was dead wrong. Instead of letting me work at the store, Barbara handed it over to one of her adult cousins. He took over immediately and only hired his own friends and family to work there. Just like that, the store my dad built from nothing was no longer mine. But Barbara didn't stop there. Before my dad passed away, she convinced him to change his will, leaving almost all of his money to her. Now, my dad was far from a billionaire, but he had saved up several $100,000 over his lifetime. And yet, despite already coming from a wealthy family in China, Barbara made sure she got it all. To be honest, I didn't even care about the money. She could have every penny. What hurt was the fact that my dad, my father, had been used by this woman. I believe she only married him to bring her family over to America and secure her financial future. Of course, that was just my theory. But it didn't matter. Nothing could bring my dad back. My dad had set aside a small trust fund for me, just enough to cover junior college tuition. But aside from that, I had nothing. And then, as soon as I turned 18, Barbara threw me out of the house. Yes, the very house my dad worked his entire life to buy. "This is not a place for you," she told me. "You go now. Bye-bye." And just like that, I was homeless. Barbara had taken everything. Why? Because, as my father's wife, she legally owned the house. And now that he was gone, she wasted no time moving in her new boyfriend. After kicking me out, Barbara wasted no time moving in her new boyfriend, a scumbag from Taiwan who, from what I heard, was some kind of big-shot mobster in his home country. But here in America, he was nothing. Instead of being some powerful crime lord, he spent his days playing mahjong and living off Barbara's money, which, let's not forget, was really my dad's money. Honestly, I think he was hiding out in the US to avoid gang trouble back in Asia. And Barbara? Well, I think she got with him because of his connections in China and Taiwan. If you ask me, there was definitely some fraud going on behind the scenes. Before I got kicked out, I learned that Barbara had used my dad's money to invest in a couple of apartment buildings. At first, I thought she was just becoming a landlord. But later, I found out the truth. She was renting out rooms to traffickers, and those buildings had basically turned into bordellos. That's right, Barbara was making serious money off illegal activities. Not only was she raking in cash from rent, but the traffickers were giving her a cut of their earnings. She had turned into a full-blown crime boss. I will give Barbara one thing. She was a very beautiful woman. It was easy to see why my dad fell for her. But personally, if I didn't know her as my stepmom, she wouldn't do a thing for me. She had this talent for making men do whatever she wanted just by batting her eyelashes and pretending to be sweet. And honestly, I'm pretty sure she did a lot more than that to get her way. I couldn't prove it in most cases, but there was one very important exception. After Barbara threw me out, I moved in with my aunt, the same one who had helped raise me when I was little. She welcomed me with open arms, even though she still had her own children to take care of. Her son was already married and had his own family, but her 3 daughters were still at home and unmarried. Even though money was tight, she never asked me for rent. Her husband had passed away years ago, so I took on the role of the man of the house. I helped out by taking care of the yard, fixing cars, and repairing computers. It felt good to be useful. Meanwhile, I started college for a degree in computer engineering, using the small inheritance my dad had left for me. For a while, I just accepted defeat. Barbara had won. She stole my dad's money, his house, his store, and everything else he had built. So, I decided to focus on myself. I got a job at a computer hobby store, where I became known for tuning and upgrading computers to make them run faster. It wasn't the best-paying job in the world, but it was a start. And in a small city like ours, where most of the Chinese community lived in one area, word spread fast. Eventually, I met Kay, my girlfriend. She was around my age and studying to become a nurse. We clicked instantly. She was smart, kind, and had a no-nonsense attitude that I admired. From early on, she knew about my living situation, that I was staying with my aunt after my evil stepmom threw me out of my dad's house. But here's the thing, I never told her Barbara's real name. That tiny detail would soon lead to a major revelation. After a few months of dating, Kay introduced me to her family. She had an older brother, Mike, who was about 26 years old. Mike was Chinese, like the rest of us, but he stood out, heavily tattooed, rough around the edges, and a former gang member. As a teenager, he got into trouble and ended up in prison. But after getting out in his early 20s, he turned things around and started working for a landscaping company. In our neighborhood, we had a nickname for guys like him. We called them cowboys. It's hard to explain exactly what that means in English, but basically, he was street smart, tough, and not afraid to get his hands dirty. One night, I was hanging out at Kay's house when she asked me something about Barbara. I casually answered, and for the first time, I said Barbara's real name. That's when Mike froze. His head snapped toward me, and he said, "Wait, say that again." I repeated her name. Mike's eyes widened, and then he burst out laughing. "No way up," he said, shaking his head. "That's your stepmom?" I looked at him, confused. "Yeah, why?" Mike smirked, leaned back in his chair, and said the last thing I ever expected to hear. "No offense, Opie, but I've been sleeping with your stepmom." I just stared at him. My mind refused to process the information. Barbara? My dad's wife. The woman who stole everything from me? Kay nearly gagged. Mike, what the hell? Mike shrugged.
What?
I mess around with a lot of women in the neighborhood. I didn't know she was OP's stepmom. But that wasn't even the biggest shock. Mike told us that Barbara had turned her apartment buildings into full-blown brothels. She's got pimps renting rooms for their girls. It's a whole operation, he said. I put two and two together. She might not say it out loud, but she knows exactly what's going on. That wasn't all. Barbara was now running for city council. She was playing the role of a hardworking immigrant businesswoman, a self-made success story. But in reality, she was just a glorified crime lord. She had big plans. If she got into local politics, she could expand her empire even further. Kay and I looked at each other. This was it. Our chance to take Barbara down. Kay turned to her brother and asked, "Would you help us put my stepmom in jail?" Mike grinned. "Hell yeah. I'd love to see that be ***** go down." Kay and I knew Barbara was untouchable in the legal sense. She had covered her tracks well. Her money laundering, human trafficking, and drug deals were all hidden under layers of paperwork. But there was one thing that could bring her down instantly: a scandal. That's where Mike came in. At first, he didn't really care about taking Barbara down. "She pays me," he admitted with a shrug. But when Kay asked him to help, everything changed. "Fine," he said, cracking his knuckles. "But if you ever hurt my little sister, I'll cut your balls off. Deal?"
Deal.
That's when we came up with the perfect plan. Mike was still sleeping with Barbara, so we decided to use that to our advantage. The plan was simple. 1. Record Barbara admitting to her crimes. 2. Catch her doing drugs on camera. 3. Expose her publicly, ruining her city council campaign. Mike hid his phone in her room and let it record while they But this wasn't just about the sex. He got clear footage of Barbara snorting cocaine. He made sure she talked about the drugs openly. She mentioned the date, proving the footage was recent. She even bragged about how her apartment buildings were making her rich. And, for extra entertainment, Mike got her to say that her Taiwanese boyfriend was a weak fool who wasn't a real man. It was perfect. The final edited version of the video was about 10 seconds long, just enough to destroy her reputation instantly. A week later, Barbara was scheduled to give a speech at a city council campaign event. The room was packed. About 100 people were there. Her Taiwanese boyfriend sat in the front row, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Her cousins, the ones my dad had sponsored to America, were also in attendance, ready to cheer her on. Nobody noticed the young guy in dark sunglasses and a beanie sitting quietly in the front row. That was me. And inside my backpack was a USB drive containing Barbara's destruction. She was the fourth speaker of the night. The first 3 candidates gave boring speeches about policy and economics. Nobody really cared. Then it was Barbara's turn. She walked up to the stage, smiling confidently. She looked powerful, like a woman who had already won. She started speaking. And then I pressed play. The time had come. Barbara stood confidently at the podium, smiling like she already won the election. She spoke in her practiced, politician voice about how she was a strong businesswoman, a pillar of the community, and a role model for immigrant success. Yeah, right. I reached into my backpack and pulled out my secret weapon, a powerful Bluetooth speaker. It was about 20 inches tall and, at max volume, could shake an entire house. I had tested it at home. Oh yeah, this was going to be loud. I placed it near the stage, careful not to draw attention. Then I pulled out my phone. A few taps later, my homemade projector box, a custom build for my computer store job, lit up, casting an image onto the back wall of the stage. And then I pressed play. Barbara's own voice echoed across the room. She was on screen sitting in her expensive house, doing cocaine and talking about how weak her Taiwanese boyfriend was. And then came the nail in the coffin. Oh God, me, Mikey. The crowd froze. Silence. Then someone in the back shouted in Chinese, "Hey, that's Mike." That's when all hell broke loose.
People gasped.
Someone screamed. Barbara's boyfriend's face turned red. Others pulled out their phones, recording the chaos. Barbara just stood there. Her eyes were wide, her mouth hung open, her face drained of color. The clip looped again. Oh God, me, Mikey. Barbara finally snapped out of it. Turn it off. Turn it off now, she screamed. Too late. Everybody had seen it. I grabbed my speaker and projector box, stuffed them into my backpack, and slipped out the side door. Kay was waiting outside in the car, engine running. Before I left, I turned back one last time, and in perfect Chinese, I shouted, "This is not a place for you, Barbara. You go now, but bye." Then I got in the car, and we sped off into the night. That weekend, Kay and I got engaged. I moved in with her uncle near my new school and focused on finishing my computer engineering degree. Kay became a full RN, making most of the money for now, but soon I'd be earning big too. As for Barbara, well, her Taiwanese boyfriend dumped her. And by dumped, I mean he wanted to kill her. She fled the city to avoid him. Her city council campaign was dead. Her bordello apartments were shut down. Thanks to an anonymous tip, authorities cracked down. Her family businesses collapsed. My dad had set them all up, but after Barbara's disgrace, customers abandoned them. Some even went bankrupt. My dad's old house got foreclosed. A white family moved in, the only white people on the block. Godspeed, round eyes. Barbara tried to erase the video from the internet, but by then it was too late. The short clip spread through Facebook and Instagram before getting taken down for community guidelines violations. But the full version? Well, Mike had other plans. He uploaded it to pay sites, making money off Barbara's greatest failure. She was done. And me? I finally felt free. I looked up at the sky and thought about my dad. Hey, Dad. I forgive you. You didn't leave me much, but you taught me to be strong. And that was the best inheritance of all. I don't know if this stunt will send me to heaven or hell. But either way, it was worth it. Please feel free to comment below if you like this. Remember to like and subscribe for more.